what happened in 1965? A giant welfare state where the government stepped in and tried to be the parent rather than doing what it was called to do. The Great Society caused the disparities that we're seeing.
Yeah. Welcome to Tearing Down High Places. This is Joe Gordon. I'm here with Pastor Jeff and Pastor Tim, and we're going to tear down a high place today that some of you might not think is a really high place. Tim, what's the high place we're going to
The high place is on the top shelf. I can't quite reach it. You tell them, Joe.
Government charity. Should the government be involved in charity at all? And how much of a problem is it, and what's the trickle-down effects from it? Yeah.
You showed a clip, you sent us a clip over email that is just one of my favorite quotes of all time, so I was so glad when you sent it. Share it with the people.
Antonin Scalia, you may recall, was a Supreme Court justice who passed away recently, not too far. It was a couple years ago now. Yeah. He said, the transformation of charity into legal entitlement has produced donors without love and recipients without gratitude. How's that strike your heart?
How's that strike my heart? So, entitlement is never good. So if we're producing entitlement, we're probably producing angry, bitter, entitled people.
Yeah.
So that's something I don't want to be behind.
This culture has become an entitlement culture. That's one of the root issues.
Root issues of what?
Well, the fact that we've left our biblical foundations as a country. Let me share a verse with you.
Yeah.
Proverbs 28:5. What was the one we did before? Daniel 12. Memorized? This would be another good memory verse. Everybody, we've got to memorize Proverbs 28:5.
28:5. Evil
men do not understand justice, but those who seek the Lord understand it completely. Evil men do not understand justice. There's no sense of right and wrong that governs choices, right? But those who seek the Lord understand it completely.
Completely.
We have the ability through Scripture to understand not just questions of sexual morality, but economics. Today we're talking about economics and all areas of life. The Bible actually does speak to these issues of justice.
So the next verse in there says, better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in his ways. And I tell you something, I think might shock some people, or they might push back on this. One of the problems with the government being involved in charity is they discriminate against poor people, very strictly. So, for example, there's a federal organization called Child Protective Services in New Jersey. We call them. They keep changing their names. They're like remarketing themselves, but they used to be DIFAS, and now they're DCPNP. And so, a lot of people, a lot of Christians think that these are good people that just help you adopt or foster children. But when they come in and do an investigation of people's homes, they will discriminate against you if you're poor, and they will take your children based on your poverty.
I've heard horror stories about DIFAS, but I don't know the extent of it.
Literally, if because of mandatory reporter laws, if poor people know this, if a poor person's child breaks a leg or an arm, they will literally take the child home first, make sure they're as clean as possible, and get them in good clothes before taking them to the emergency room.
Oh wow! Because they're so afraid of what will happen.
They know what will happen. They know what will happen. So this goes to so the question of how did the government get so involved in charity historically?
Right. Well, I have queued up for us a clip that I want to show you guys today that I think is a turning point in American history. Okay. Now, by turning point, it's not so drastic as if there wasn't something that preceded it, but it was a watershed moment that has completely wrecked entire swaths of American culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go all the way back to the early 1900s, you already have government beginning to step in and do like overreach, right? William Jennings Bryan pushed a lot of those from the Democratic platform. Then it gets really bad under FDR with the New Deal, and government's taking on a larger and larger share in society. But the president that brought us over that precipice, the watershed president, was Lyndon Johnson. And I'm going to show you a clip from him from a speech he gave at Howard University in 1965.
Okay.
Because it's where he was beginning to introduce what he called the Great Society. And the concept of the Great Society is that government will now be involved in equaling out the outcomes of people's economic future. Not just giving equal rights, but equal outcomes.
Ouch.
So let me play this for us.
Is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying now, you are free to go where you want and do as you desire and choose the leaders you please. You do not take a person who for years has been hobbled by chains and liberate him, bringing up to the starting line of a race, and then say, you are free to compete with all the others, and still justly believe that you have been completely fair. Thus, it is not enough just to open the gates of opportunity. All our citizens must have the ability to walk through those gates. And this is the next and the more profound stage of the battle for civil rights. We seek not just freedom, but opportunity. We seek not just legal equity, but human ability. Not just equality as a right and a theory, but equality as a fact and equality as a result.
What did American pastors say about that? Fact that.
Evidently, American pastors had become so pietist that they said very little. Now, there was at that time the rise of the moral majority, but that doesn't happen for about 10 or 15 years later.
Okay.
So when Jerry Falwell and all of the conservatives began to speak out politically, that happens in the mid-70s and through the 80s.
Yeah.
But in 1965, there just wasn't enough moral outrage about what Lyndon Johnson just said.
Okay. So I think I asked you about this before and I got it wrong, so I'll ask you again in this context. So this is where I thought the fundamentalists retreated from society. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I would say that those who held a biblical worldview, the fundamentalists,
Okay.
were not engaged enough at this point in history. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think there's probably some people saying, okay, yeah, we know that, and what's wrong with trying to make people lift people up? We say it at the end, close of our show. If you see a brother down, lift them up. What's wrong? What's wrong with lifting a brother up?
It's so clearly different what they're saying from what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
What they're saying is that the government needs to extract from the people by the edge of the sword, to wield the sword of government,
Okay.
to exact taxes.
Right.
That's forced charity. It's not charity at all.
Right.
It's extracting money, which will just embitter people,
Mm-hmm.
right, by raising taxes,
Yep.
and then redistributing the wealth
Mm-hmm.
to provide for people,
Yeah.
to bring about an equal outcome. So this is in the Great Society. This is where you see the huge urban development plans and the housing projects in St. Louis that just absolutely fail.
Mm-hmm.
But government building these incredible amount of housing and providing food stamps and all kinds of government assistance, where they become like paternalistic over a group of people. So what's wrong with that? Well, it's not charity at all. It's injustice. It's taking, it's Robin Hood. It's stealing from some to give to another.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the church is to be charitable. Out of the act of love from the heart, we care for people. And especially, and Tim, you've done some thought on this, where a family and church kind of intersect at that point.
Yeah, I think, the main people that the church should be looking out for, it says, I think it's the book of James, it says, this is true religion, to look out for widows and orphans, right? To look out for them. Those people need care, right?
Yes.
But who are the first lines that those people should have?
The family.
It's not the church,
Family.
It's not the government, it's the family.
Yeah.
Amen.
Take a deeper look, and that will bring the family together, and maybe you see that you need a father in the house, you need a mother in the house, you need to stay together to make things work. And then even to widows who are widows, take a look at them to see what their character is, and also if they're 60 years old, if they can remarry if they're younger. So I think there's some qualifications we look at the Bible to be wise with our money, to be wise with who we give it to, who actually needs help.
Yep.
So you're saying, sounds like you're saying God established the family to do some things,
Yeah.
the church to do other things, and the government has its own little role, and it's supposed to stay in that little role. How's the government doing staying in its little role?
This is the huge problem, is they've become this behemoth that wants to do everything.
Yeah.
They want to provide when they're not meant to be providers. They're to bear the sword, not in vain. Right? Romans 13, 1 Peter 2. It's a very limited scope for what government is supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I've got some quotes from. So you talked about the 60s. If I'm going to take us back to 1831.
Oh boy.
Do you remember a guy by the name of Polk, P-O-L-K?
Mm-hmm.
So he was our 11th president, and there was a little fight going on in Congress. Before he became president, he was in Congress in 1831, so there was the mayor of Georgetown had sent a letter to the House of Representatives asking for relief of the poor of that city and soliciting the House to grant a donation of some wood that was in the vaults of the Capitol for their use, right? So this was wood that was paid for with government money. What's government money?
It's the people's
It's
money.
the people's money.
But they've
right?
got this pile of wood. That
Got a
like,
pile
hey,
of wood.
you guys aren't using that wood. That's, we
Give
need
us
that
some
wood.
wood.
Give us the wood.
Give
All
us
right.
some wood,
So
yeah.
what did they say?
So here's what happened. So James Polk was the first one to step up. He was a Democrat from Tennessee, the future 11th president of the United States. And he went on to oppose the resolution of the House and offer support. He said, quote, "The precedent of appropriating the public funds for such a purpose was a bad one," unquote. He reasoned that if they allowed this seemingly small act of charity, then, quote, "every winter when the snow fell or the Potomac was frozen, applications would be made to Congress and members would be engaged in the dignified object of buying and stowing wood to give to the poor District of Columbia," unquote. So Polk opposed this, and he said because they do not have the power. The House of Representatives was not given the authority to distribute anything.
Right.
It's not theirs. Like, I can't say to you,
Right.
hey, you need some wood? Tim, give me your wood. I'm gonna give Jeff your wood. You're all right with that, right?
No, I wouldn't be okay with that. Well,
You might
that's
at least
my brother.
want-
I'd probably
you
help
might
him
want
out.
at
Well,
least-
that would be your
That would be
charity.
my charity.
But you would
That's your charity.
Joe tries to take your wood.
Basically, that would be you stealing from me to give to Jeff.
Well, you
Instead
might-
of-
government
and you're
is-
taking that blessing of me being able to just help my brother.
Well, not
Yes.
only that,
Yeah.
he might have not just a material need, but he may also have a spiritual need. So if you can give him
You have to
the wood
investigate.
directly, right?
Everything is
So
different.
important.
You can't just There's, I mean, even in 1 Timothy chapter 5, it says, "Honor widows who are truly widows." So you have to look and actually see: do they truly need help? Is there someone else that can help them, or are we just going to give them money they don't need?
I like that.
It's like that
verse.
book, When Helping Hurts. You become part of the problem when you think you're helping.
I like that verse. So one of the things that happened in the 60s in the Great Society is they started incentivizing women to be single and pregnant and have children because they got funds from the government.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear that verse, it always makes me think, when I hear someone says and this is no offense to single mothers who were abandoned by men or something, but I always have to ask, how did you become single?
Right.
Because 80% of the time, when people get separated, the woman is the one that left.
Oh, wow.
And I believe it's because of feminism and our culture is promoting the idea that motherhood is bad. You don't want to be pregnant. It's nothing worse than having a bunch of kids around the house. You need a job. You need to go work in corporate America.
Yeah.
Come on.
Right.
Get with the program.
That's the biggest disservice I think we're doing to women. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I find it way more attractive in a woman if she wants to be a good wife, if she wants to raise children, if she wants children, if she wants to keep the house, if she wants to be at home.
Yeah.
I think that's really God's design.
I
And
read
that
it.
is so attractive to me, but
Yeah.
the world, I don't know, I think even women are like, they don't see that as fulfilling. When
Well, it's
the
so funny
most
though. Like
fulfilling thing.
I read an article about how liberal women are really upset because the only dateable guys that they're finding are conservative. The only masculine men they can find are conservative. They're all mad. Well, there's a reason for this.
Yeah.
The liberal boys are all playing video games.
But also there's no even marriage is being devalued. Why get married? A lot of people are thinking.
Listen,
But
I tell guys all the time, I'm like, if your woman's not in the Bible every day, what the heck are you thinking? Don't even bother getting married. And if you're not in the Bible, why do you want to get married?
Yeah.
You know?
But also people are afraid of an adult commitment. They don't want to make a commitment, which I think marriage. You probably disagree, Joe, but I still think marriage is a good thing in the world.
I'm married twice. I love marriage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, believers, marriage, great for believers, but even for unbelievers, wouldn't that be a good thing?
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what. So I want to go back to what you were saying about women who want to have a family. The women I as an older fella, I've met a lot of women who later in life had one child, and they're sad that they didn't have more. They can't go back in time.
Right.
And they had that one child, and they look at their life and they're like, why did I spend the first 15 years trying to make some career that didn't make me happy, didn't fulfill me in the way God designed me?
Right.
Because God did design them. Man, if God made me to make babies, I'd have lots of them, but it didn't.
Actually, someone just gave my fiance advice. I think they were asking her, like, are you going to have kids when you're married and try to have kids, or are you going to just have time for yourself? And time, you know what I mean, living your life. And then she was like, no, I want to have kids right away. She's like, well, don't you want to live your life? And she's like, I've been doing that for 30 years.
Don't want to wait on that.
Yeah.
Man. It's a blessing to fill that quiver, right?
Yeah.
I think the most beautiful thing is when the man, as the head of the home, provider, protector, is out front leading in making money, working in industry, and there's a way for her to come and help that business and be active as that Proverbs 31 woman.
Yeah.
That's the most beautiful design. I think that's how it was so often in ancient times, right? When he was a farmer, she was doing so many chores that made his work more successful and around the house, but also part of the actual industry, making money, working with her hands. But there's a teamwork in that where it's his headship, but she's a support to that. That's a perfect thing.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
I've
That's
read
good
about
stuff
that.
right there.
I've read about that the Industrial Revolution really put a strain on families because you learned how to work together all day long.
Yeah.
Mom, dad, the kids out on the farm, planting, sowing, reaping.
Yeah.
And now, we're gone.
Now she's off working for a different boss, a different head, different authority in her life, and then she comes home and complains to her husband about how terrible this boss is. How much better if there could be a way to work as a team with his headship and his leadership in that business. I mean, if that can be done, it's not always the case in our, you're living in the culture in which you live. You gotta be in the world, not of it. But if you can make that ideal, go for it.
Boy, that sounds like another good podcast at some point to talk about leaving corporate America and being more entrepreneurial. But we had a more entrepreneurial everything.
Yeah.
And now, but that's another thing that the government's taken away is the ability to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Even that, you see the articles about kids with lemonade stands. Like, where's your sales permit, kid? You don't have a permit. What are you doing?
So what can we as a church advocate and say or do to move this culture back to where it should be? Should we speak out about these things? Should we talk about, those who seek the Lord understand justice completely? What can we say and do? How can churches move this needle in the right direction.
Well, I think you do a great job. Just as you know, I've noticed as I've watched you preach, it's whatever the admonition is from Scripture, you like to highlight the opposite that comes out of the culture.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
To
we
show
can
the
identify and
contrast.
see these things because we don't see them.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, well, that's the way it's always been.
One thing I think we need to say, and we can say it in this podcast to everybody listening, that big government is not just like, okay, well, some people want a little bigger, other smaller. It's just, where are you on the scale? No big deal.
Right.
Big government is evil.
Evil.
It is evil. It's
Evil.
where the government is doing what hurts people and
Right.
against their charter and in a way that is destructive. So we have to oppose big government. So teach people that's not just some, just this way or that way. Kind of, I lean left or I lean right.
Yeah.
No, what's happening in the culture is the government has become just this monster.
Yeah.
And we've got to reduce the size of government.
Well, and we've got to know our history. If we don't know our history, we're doomed to it. So you brought up the 60s, I brought up 1831. But the Constitution, a lot of times the left will attack the Founding Fathers. And they'll attack, well, those old guys, what do they know? Well, you know what? Everything that they designed in the Constitution wasn't created by them. They weren't brilliant. I mean, there was 700 years prior. We go back to the 1100, the 1100 Charter of Liberties that came even before the Magna Carta.
Right.
The Magna Carta was the enforcement of that, and those in 1100. I'm just doing this from memory, so if it's wrong, I'll put a correction up. But from the 1100 Charter of Liberties had three big precedents in it. There was a king who was coming in, and he was not popular. And he needed to do something to establish his reign, or he might have been kicked out. And one of the things he did was he said, government is always under the law.
Yeah.
Lex
Rule
Rex.
of law. Lex Rex.
Lex Rex. So, and he also established that the church was free, that any kind of government intervention into the church was wicked and evil, shouldn't happen. Right? And it was happening under his brother. That's right, his brother was the king.
Okay.
And he took over, and they suspected that he might have killed his brother. He's like, I didn't kill him. So anyway, but he volunteered all these things. The other thing that he did that's very, very common in our culture, he said, it's evil if a government is forcing you to pay money to get your inheritance from your father. Death tax, wicked and evil. It should never happen. But the Founding Fathers were going all the way back there, and all that stuff was based on the Bible.
Yeah, people think that, these were just this enlightened generation, 1776 and then 1787 with the Constitution.
No.
Look at who they're citing and learning from. It's Blackstone. That's the legal philosopher of the day, and the judge. And so many of his commentaries on law gave them understanding of what is right and what's wrong. But Blackstone is only learning from Scripture. A Christian man that's very much shaped by biblical law, of laws of right and wrong. So very, very much so. It was something they're learning from Scripture. Not all of it came from Scripture. Some of it is from natural law as well, because they were natural philosophers. They thought that the moral code of God was written in the world and in just common sense. So you have that common sense Thomas Paine kind of strand as well. And some of that does come from God, that they were reasoning well.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest problems we have is that the government has its tentacles into so much. We all have economic ties to what the government does.
Yeah.
And it can be scary to say, okay, I need to cut that off.
Right.
And, even things like Social Security.
Yeah.
Social Security is wicked and evil.
Right.
And let me ask you this, Jeff. How different would the abortion argument be if the government didn't have its tentacles all into medicine?
Oh.
Drugs.
Yeah.
The legalization of drugs, because now we're shutting down some. Praise God, we're shutting down some abortion clinics in parts of the country, not in Jersey, but other parts.
Right.
But now you got the RU 486 bill.
Yeah. And government wanting to fund that through tax dollars.
One thing, I believe they are.
Yeah, some of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how different it would be, but it's clear what government has become is such a huge part of the problem, and that we have to resist.
Yeah. So, I mean, What do you think about Social Security? You willing to give up your Social Security?
Social Security,
Yeah.
oh man.
You looking forward to that? You're a long ways off of Social Security.
Yeah, I'm a little long ways off.
So you
on
probably
that.
haven't
Well,
thought
I think
about
I would take what was taken from us. That point is they're stealing from you all your life long.
it. Right.
They drain off of it. You're not getting like if you had just invested
Right,
that
that's
money
a
in the
good
stock market, you would have this huge return.
Yeah.
Instead, you get these peanuts on the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, though, like as a church, the government tried to step in and offer us tens of thousands of dollars,
Right.
probably $50,000
Right.
after the COVID lockdown because they caused so much harm.
Right.
They were sending these PPP payments or whatever
Mm-hmm.
to the churches,
Yeah.
and we said no. We didn't want to touch the government money.
That's great.
Yeah, turned it down because that's not their place, and we didn't want any ties. Some
Yeah.
future obligation. Well, hey, you took the money.
Yeah.
And
You
all right,
signed
well,
the
you-
terms and conditions. You clicked
Yes.
off on the terms and conditions without getting a copy, but
Yeah.
you're in.
right. We keep that separation. So.
How many times do we do
Yeah.
that? Click off on terms and conditions.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you, lawyers. Yeah, appreciate you. Well, so all right. So let me just share something about Social Security. I mean, are you guys under the impression that Social Security is mainly for retirement, like to help people with retirement?
Mainly, I don't know. They've got the Medicaid aspect of it too, so it's welfare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is. I'm here to tell you, it's something I've studied a little bit. It's a slush fund for all kinds of evil.
Oh, is it?
So there's and it's all under these different titles. So Title 4D is what funds the family courts from the feds. So the federal government, under our Constitution, isn't supposed to get involved in certain things at the state
Right.
level, right? So what they do is they say, well, if you'll follow our template,
Mm-hmm.
we'll give you money.
Wow.
Well, just to help you guys out. You want some little help, and you take a little help. So what they do is, so all the so family courts are different in all the states, but they're really the same when they get funded. And what they do is they fund the enforcement of child support and spousal support, so that the local government gets a percentage of whatever is paid, usually 30 to 40 cents on the dollar. So that not out of what one spouse is paying the other. And oh, by the way, women pay 15% of the time. Women are making the payments, not just men making payments.
Yeah.
So, but it all comes from Social Security Act Title 4D. All
Wow.
that money. 30,
I did not know
40
this.
cents
It
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me. The government trying to do everything it was never commissioned by God to do.
Everything. I mean,
Yeah.
and medicine, like is the other one. Medicine's like 30% of the economy. I mean, do you think we have like free medicine? I mean, like, is there choices in your healthcare? Do you get to do whatever you want? You get to keep your doctor?
Oh, man.
Remember that? Remember that promise?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Remember that
Well,
promise?
when Obama made that promise, we thought, okay, this is a lie.
Yeah.
Well, sure enough, the plan that we had, our medical plan, was eliminated under Obamacare, and we lost our insurance.
Did you?
We ended up going on Medishare, which was like a Christian cost sharing thing.
Yeah.
But we lost our insurance when that happened.
Yeah. Wow.
We were missionaries in the inner city, so we were relying on like the basic and essential insurance plan,
Yeah.
and which was just insurance for catastrophic things, which is what insurance ought to be in the first place.
Right.
And now it's morphed into like all healthcare. But Obamacare made that plan illegal
Yeah.
because those signing up must not know what they're signing up for
Right.
and how little it covers. No, we're adults. We can sign up for what we want to sign up for. But
Yeah.
Obama took that from us.
But those plans are great. I hear a lot of good things about those, and I think
The basic and essential.
Yeah.
Or Medishare.
Medishare.
Yeah. That
There's
was
a
very
bunch
good.
of them, and a lot of them are based on some of them are based on you have to be a Christian in order to purchase.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they don't support things that support abortion and whatnot.
Right. Right.
Oh, nice.
I mean, you asked what can the church do? I mean, I assume you didn't mean the pastors only.
No.
Yeah. The
This is why we're
church.
talking to everybody.
The church can come up with ways for us to have our own economy
Yeah.
within the economy.
Yeah.
To help us wean off of the government.
Yes. What we need is a candidate like Milei in Argentina, who
Yeah.
comes in and says, the government will do almost nothing.
Yeah.
Cut government down to size.
Yeah.
And so if we have a candidate like that, even at the state level,
Yeah.
Congress people that understand justice
Right.
and would like to see government do less in
Right.
terms of just throwing money out willy-nilly.
Right.
Those are the kind of people we need to support.
I wonder what you think about this. I've heard good arguments, but I think they're pretty good arguments. I've heard arguments that you can't just cut everything off because you're going to hurt people.
Yeah.
Right. That unwillingly participated and did what they thought was the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. But at the same time, we've got to cut it off. We're participating in evil.
Frederick Douglass, when asked what the government should do for reparations and things like that, he said, "How about this? Do nothing." Booker T. Washington had the same attitude.
Right.
But government, like Lyndon Johnson in that same Howard speech, when he's talking about the three-leg race and you've got him shackled for the first, he's saying, no, they're going to need you to come alongside and make things equal, which is really to disesteem people. It's really racist, is what it is. And actually, if you watch that whole speech, he is so racist in the way he talks. It's the most ridiculous thing.
Well, I've only heard racist people use that analogy. I guess he came up with that? Or?
He was the first to popularize it.
That's still going around.
It was that Howard speech, and I've even seen church leaders that we would know promoting that same argument.
Yeah, which is doesn't make any sense. Was that a historically black college too?
Yeah, Howard was.
So, So he probably was pandering. Pandering a little bit.
But it was the exact opposite. Like it was.
But also that makes no sense because I mean, when Black Lives Matter were happening, that was like one of the main arguments. But like, you're saying you have to, give more to all black people, but not all black people have the same situation and circumstance, and not all white people have white privilege or whatever they say. You know what I mean? What about the poor white?
What about white people that look black and black people that look white?
Yeah. Well, that goes back to Plessy versus Ferguson in the 1890s, when a racist decision about Arthur Plessy, he had 1/16 African American descent from his grandparents, and he wanted to just sit in the white coach, and he was told that he couldn't because he had 1/16 African American blood. One judge dissented to that opinion and said, "How do you even distinguish who's white and who's black?" He is and so their argument from that point on was just one drop. He's black because he has just one drop. Well, that led to so much of the segregation and all of the problems of the 1960s, the Jim Crow laws. How do you know? Just one drop. And to this day, affirmative action. How do you determine Elizabeth Warren trying to claim she's Native American?
Well, why do black people
Why
do black people have the drop and white people don't even have a drop?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why do they have a drop but we don't have a drop?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Elizabeth Warren was 132nd American Indian, and she tried to claim, I'm the first Native American. It's like,
but where's the one?
Where is the line?
Where's the line? I was sitting at Cairn one time at lunch with some friends, back when I went to Cairn, and we were talking about, I don't know how it came up, but the one drop rule came up, like, because my one friend is half white, half black, and then I think someone had asked him, "What do you consider yourself to be, white or black?" And he was like, "Well, I don't know, I'm half." And then a black girl answered for him and said, "He's black, one drop rule." And then someone said, "You should know your fiance is half black." And I was like, "Yeah, well, she says she's both white and black though." Well, she's lying, she's racist. You know what I mean?
Well, so Judge Harlan was that judge in Plessy versus Ferguson, and Clarence Thomas, who's one of probably him and Alito are the only two good justices we have.
Right.
But he cited that case when he's arguing against affirmative action. He said the Constitution, law, justice is colorblind. Because you can't distinguish these things. Treat people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. It's such a simple thing.
Matters.
Yeah, that's what he said. Hey man, I'm half Irish, quarter Polish, quarter Hungarian. I'm gonna tell you, my Hungarian relatives in the summertime, I got the Irish skin, but my sister got the Hungarian skin. She could be something. I don't know.
Yeah,
she's pretty dark.
Hey, but what did we teach the kids in the vacation Bible school the one time? It's not shades of black and white, but we're all shades of brown.
Yes.
If you really look at it, we all come from Adam and Eve.
I like what Bodhi Bacham says.
Shades of brown from dark to light, each is precious in his sight. Not red and yellow, black and white. It's so ridiculous.
I like Bodhi Bacham says, I don't look down at you just because you lack melanin.
Right.
It's fine. Just because you're not blessed like me. So it's crazy. But look, government causes all these problems, and I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to talk a lot about this in a lot of different scenarios. I mean, because it impacts so many things. And I think, we talk a lot about abortion, and we talk a lot about different things and the culture. I mean, we need control. We got to get control back of our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, just to tie this together with the conversation as it moved towards race, there's a book by Shelby Steele called White Guilt.
Okay.
And he traces the disparities of outcome between the different ethnic groups in our culture to that 1965 Lyndon Johnson speech.
Okay.
And when government came and tried to gerrymander things, they ended up creating the very disparities that we see today.
Right.
So it's not a result or a legacy of slavery or Jim Crow, but really because the different racial groups in America were evening out before 1965. What happened in 1965? A giant welfare state where the government stepped in and tried to be the parent rather than doing what it was called to do. The Great Society caused the disparities that we're seeing.
Yeah. Do you think we're seeing, enough people? Do enough people know this?
Well, no, because how popular was this Joe Biden idea of forgiving student debt? Anytime there's another big government initiative to give away money or reparations, it seems like maybe a majority of the culture goes along with that.
Yep.
But I think there are a lot of people that are opening their eyes too to see.
All right. Well, that's it. Pastor Jeff has called it. That's a show. We're very grateful that you showed up here today. Don't forget to send in your red pastors. If you don't go to this church, you go to another church, and you got a pastor that's speaking truth into the culture, we want to know. We want you to send that into podcast@cornerstonesj.org. And so until next time, if you see a brother down, lift him up. If you see a high place, tear it down.